Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Joshana here with some books I have recently read. So the first book I'm going to talk about is Markswoman by Rati Mehrotra, and I'm pretty sure I pronounced that correctly. I try to find correct pronunciations online if it's unbeknownst to me, but I couldn't really find that one, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. At any rate, Markswoman, I've talked about this because it was from the library, so it was in a library haul. It's fantasy, as most of the books I read are. It was a really cool magic system where it was different orders of, like, basically assassins, and all of the orders were women, except there was one that was with men, but they were, like, shunned and whatever. But the magic is that they bond with these blades, with their knives. And they're like they're made, the material is like some magical material, and it's almost like they're telepathic with their knives or their daggers, whatever. And it was pretty cool, and I was like, cool, trained assassin, sign me up. And I liked the world a lot. I felt like the world building was pretty cool, and I thought it was done pretty well. But towards the end, it got kind of like anticlimactic. The whole buildup of the book was with our main character and this other powerful figure of authority in her order, and she had like left her order, and then it was like building up to them like duking it out basically. And I just felt like what happened was it felt kind of rushed and, again, anticlimactic. So I didn't love it. On my 1 to 10 scale, I gave it 6.25. which is like pretty decent, and then that translates to a 3. There is romance involved in this book, and I just have to say that I kept seeing reviews mentioning insta-love, and I was like, oh god. But it's funny because, like, at least for my perception, the main character did not experience insta-love. She did have a romance going on, but it wasn't like a slow burn. But it wasn't like an immediate, like, oh my god, he's so cute and I love him, or I like him. But there was this other freaking character that literally had insta-love towards our main character, and he was so annoying. This guy, I can't even remember his name. I didn't write it down. But he was so obnoxious, and he was like the nice, sweet guy, right? And without describing it, it might sound like, oh, she didn't like him because, ooh, girls don't like the nice guy. But no, this dude was psycho. Like, she could very clearly tell that he liked her, and she was, like, as politely as she could, letting him know, like, hey, man, not interested like that. And he literally, like, he just, like, kind of, like, chuckles, like, oh, that's cute. You will eventually. I'll make you love me. Like, what, psycho? Like, and then he literally just harassed her to the point of being a crazy person, like, trying to kidnap her because he just was convinced that if they could just run off together, she would love him eventually. Psycho. And that really annoyed me because it was kind of like, why is this in here? Like, it didn't move the plot along, really. So yeah, there was just a couple of times where I was like, meh, whatever. The next book I read, I'm sure you've seen before because it's freaking everywhere right now on BookTube and Bookish Twitter and everything. But that is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. And yeah, this one was pretty awesome. Oh, and I got the Barnes & Noble, like, exclusive or whatever. So it's the red cover, and I love it. It's so pretty. On my 1 to 10 scale, I gave this a 7, and that translates to 4 push unicorns. And yeah, I really liked this. It's been said many times, I might do a separate review just for this book, but like I kind of feel like they're all over the place. You can probably find some much better than what I would say. The world building, though, is amazing. Like, it's really, really good. It's based on African folklore and myths and all of that, and it was really, really cool seeing that in a book and experiencing that. It's obviously fantasy. I say obviously because, like, there's magic, and it's based on folklore and mythology. But yeah, there's magic, and I feel like I don't need to go into the whole premise. I really liked all of, like, the plot. Like, I felt like it flowed pretty well. I've heard some people vocalize that they felt like in the middle it kind of got slow. I didn't necessarily feel that, I guess, but I could see how you could, because there's parts where not as much action is happening, but I still liked what was happening, the character development and everything. There is some insta-love happening, and I won't go into who is experiencing it, but that was kind of bothersome too, because it's not just insta-love. I don't want to like spoil stuff. The one in particular character who experiences some insta-love, I just felt like it didn't match with their personality. It wasn't a huge deal, I guess, because I did like so much of the other stuff going on. And the princess, Amari is her name, by the way, I didn't say her name. She's freaking awesome. She had some really great character development, and like her arc was awesome. And I'm very excited for the next book, and I won't say what I hope happens in the next book, but like, I foresee awesomeness. The next book I read was Gilded Cage by Vic James. This was recommended to me by, why can't I freaking remember, Ethereal Theory, the name she goes by on her channel. It's not her actual like first name, it's her middle name. I want to say Leanne. At any rate, Ethereal Theory. She's awesome, and she recommended this book to me. It's a fantasy. It's more of like an urban fantasy, kind of dystopian almost, I want to say. I don't know. It's in a world that's like our world, except there is magic, but in this world, only the very like elite people have magic. Everybody else is kind of their peons. And in this world, every person who does not have magic has to do their years, where they have to do 10 years of servitude just to keep like society running and everything. Like they can either do it in these like slave towns where they're like doing hard labor, manual labor, whatever, or they can go and be like servants to the elite people. I can't remember all the names for everything now. But yeah, I thought it was a very cool, like unique world. Pretty dark, very dark. There actually is one thing in this book that was like, I wasn't like bothered by it, but it was hella disturbing. Like you don't see anything happening to anybody being tortured or anything like that. It's more or less someone after they have been tortured and you don't know what happened to them to get them to this point, but like I don't want to say anything in case people read it to spoil anything, but it was one of those things where I read it and I was just like, oh, that's disturbing. And some characters that were really interesting. We're going between our two like main characters, basically, are a brother and sister. And it says in the synopsis that they get separated, like the whole family is going to go do their 10 years together, but the brother gets separated, goes to a slave town, and the sister and the mom and dad and other little sister go and are servants in this, the wealthy magical people's house. Why can't I remember what they're called? Oh my God. And so you're seeing the brother in the slave town, like doing his thing, and then the sister doing her thing. And the brother's part was more interesting to me than the sister's part. And the sister, like there is some literal insta-love. Like literally, as soon as she lays eyes upon this guy, she's like in love and has a crush, and oh my God, she can't stop thinking about him. I'm like, you have other things to worry about right now. The rest of it made up for that. That wasn't even like the focus of the book. It just, every time it would come up here and there, I was just like, oh God, nobody cares, girl. There are some characters in here that are like anti-heroes kind of, and they're very interesting, very complex. And I got the second book from the library, and she and I are going to read it together. Oh, I didn't say the rating. On my 1 to 10, this got a 6.87, which translates to 3.5 pushinicorns. And then back to back, I didn't mean to do this, but I read two books that were both based on Indian folklore. The fantasy one was based on Indian folklore and mythology, and then the contemporary was just like Indian Americans and, you know, their culture. And so the first one was the contemporary, which was You Bring the Distant Near by Mitali Perkins. And I really enjoyed this. You guys know, I don't like YA contemporary very much at all. Like, if ever. Like, there's been like 4 that I've read in the last year that I've been like, yeah, that was pretty good. The rest of the time, I'm just like, ugh, no. And I think the reason I liked this one, and it's actually, now that I think about it, the other ones that I've really liked have mostly there's romance in them, but like the underlying theme is the family element. And that is definitely the thing with this book. It's about this family. It crosses over a couple generations. And I just thought it was really well done, and it was really interesting. And there's nothing particularly like really earth-shattering that happens. But it was just interesting. I don't know. I thought it was a cool journey through this family. And on my 1 to 10, I gave this 6.5, which translates to 3.5 push unicorns. Highly recommend if you're looking for some diverse, interesting YA contemporary. And then we come to The Library of Fates by Aditi Khorana. This is fantasy based on Indian folklore and mythology. And the concept was really great. We have a princess who's promised to be married to this like evil emperor guy that she's just like, nah, I don't wanna, but she's gonna do it. But then she ends up not doing it, and then she's on this adventure with a like seer or an oracle, I guess, rather. And she's on this adventure to try to change her fate, basically. And I don't want to give too much additional info because I don't want to spoil anything. It was a really cool concept, and like the adventure she went on, I liked the idea of it, but it just felt kind of rushed, honestly. There are times when books feel hella drawn out, Dreams of Gods and Monsters, and where you're like, God, this did not need to be this freaking long, like, at all. But this one, I felt like could have been longer, or could have been broken up into a duology, because I'm fairly certain it's a standalone fantasy, which I was kind of excited about because I usually am reading series and starting a bunch of freaking different series. So I was like, oh cool, standalone, great. But I feel like it should have been a duology, because it could have been better, I think, if the adventures were more fleshed out and the characters were more fleshed out. Because, yeah, the characters felt a little bit just like meh. On my 1 to 10 scale, I gave this 5.8, which was 3 push unicorns. So it was like middle of the road. And our main character was very wishy-washy. I mean, it's this YA thing, right? These teenage girls. She's like madly in love with this one dude at the very beginning. And then, literally like 2 days later, when she gets separated, she's like falling in love with this other guy. And it was just, things happened to explain why that happened. That was another thing. It was very predictable. There's like this mythology that's told to you, this like story of this goddess and this other being and these magical beings. And it's the story that's told to her, our main character, her whole life. And as this story's going on, you're seeing parallels between like her experience and that story. And like, I called it, like every bit of it. Like there was no plot twist. I was like, well, that's what's gonna happen, obviously. Like, that's who that is. That's who that is. And yeah, I was right. And I felt like, again, if it had been expanded a bit, I felt like it could have been better and more intrigue. So yeah, whatever. And then I read Between the Blade and Heart by Amanda Hocking, and I was really excited for this one. It's Valkyries, and like it's urban fantasy where there's like magical, magical, I guess, supernatural is more accurate. And then there's Valkyries, and it's their job when they get told by like the gods, basically, like, hey, this supernatural being has to die now, like they've been alive for this amount of time and it's time for them to go. It's the Valkyries' job to go kill said being. And so I was really excited because it sounded like a cool adventure, and I ended up feeling kind of meh about it. I didn't find myself really caring that much about what was happening in the story or about the characters. And this thing happened, I don't know if this is like, if you consider this a trope, or it's just a thing, a pet peeve of mine. They're on this mission. Our main character, she is bisexual, which that was cool. And because she just is already when the book starts. So it's not like a coming of age thing. Like she knows who she is. This is who she is. And it's not a big thing. That was really cool seeing that in a fantasy book. But she's doing this stupid teenager thing where you're on a mission to literally try to save the world. Like, if you fail, everybody might die. Like, that's kind of a big deal. But while you're on this super important mission that literally is like a couple days, you're on this high stakes mission, and you're over here flirting with these two people and like having this little love triangle thing going on. And like in the middle of like going where you gotta go, and everybody's got their swords out and everything, and you're sitting here and this boy is like, so I like you. Do you like me? I thought we had a thing going. And she says to him like, well, I don't think this is the best time or place. But then they keep talking, and it's just like, dude, I'd be so annoyed if some dude tried talking to me about how I feel about him while we're about to fight a demon, like, or an underworld god. I'd be like, dude, 0% do I want to have this conversation right now. Like, so yeah, this is a series that I don't think I'll continue. On my 1 to 10 scale, I gave it 5.75, which translates to 3 Pusheenacorns. A lot of 3.5 for me recently, which is kind of meh. Oh, and then there was another one, Signal the Noise by Silvia Moreno Garcia, that I started, and I did it for the try chapter, and I was like, oh, okay, it's cool. And then I continued, and I just did not care. I got to like the page 35 or something like that, and I could tell already that I was going to be forcing myself to keep reading. I didn't want to do that. So I quit that one. Okay, enough rambling. I feel like this is really long, and I don't know why. I got off on a few tangents, as will happen. Like, comment, subscribe, all that fun crap, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.